Well, I have a request here that I really don't understand, so we'll just have to make a stab at it. This person said, can you please show how to make air in shadows? I have no idea what that means, air in shadows, but I'm going to do what I think it means. All right, here's what I think the person meant, although it may not be. So if you're that person, leave a comment and tell me whether I'm right. And if I'm not right, be just a little bit more specific about what you mean by air in shadows or shadows with air, whatever. Anyway, I think it might mean these little holes we see on the ground when we see a cast shadow for trees, especially foliage trees, where there's backlight and the light coming through those little boughs of where we can see the sky. We call those sky holes. Somebody started that years and years ago, and we just all kind of picked up on it. Okay, call these little sky holes so we can see the sky coming through here. And then what happens when the light comes through that and casts a shadow, or the light tries to come through and can't. So it's the light's being blocked by the tree, causing the shadow to be cast. We're also seeing where the light is coming through. Those are little, actually light holes rather than air holes, but I imagine since the air would come through there too, we might call those air in shadows. But anyway, so I thought it won't hurt to give you just a little bit of a clue as to how to figure something like this out. You know, I always like that. I like to help you figure it out rather than to say, oh, this is how you do that and this is how you do that. I don't think that does you any good. But if I show you how to figure something out, and then you can apply it in all different kinds of ways as you move into your painting growth, career, experience, all that. All right, so here's what I think. All right, I'm thinking we're going to just do this part. I'm not going to try to do a whole painting, never do. Just going to do just a portion here to show you a method. Now here's the method. First of all, let's look at the direction in which those things are going, the way the light's coming through here. We see, let me just make a little mark on the canvas there, pull in just a little bit of color on the brush with some solvent in it. It's just a little bit more solvent in it. I don't want to make these marks real dark here. All right. So we can see that the direction or the pattern, see a directional pattern here that kind of does this sort of thing. Kind of moves, the light's coming right here. It's kind of sideways. It's behind the tree, you see over here. It's causing the shadow of the trunk, cast shadow of the trunk, to move in that direction. And then we have this kind of a fan configuration that kind of does this, and you see where it's straighter, where the lines are straighter, we see it more aligned right there with the sun. But these patterns are actually caused by the foliage that's on the tree. And then what's between there and where we see them lighter, of course, is where the light's coming through. So first of all, we find that pattern, and so I just do something like this. I thought that is directional. It's called directional movement. Visual, all visual things have directional movement. And so what I'm doing there is simply indicating here just some lines that show me something. Now there is this direction kind of goes that way, but I may not follow that precisely. But what I really want to do is to show something of this pattern of directional movement where, let's say the tree trunk is about right there, and go from there. Now, then at that point, I would just play it by ear. So first of all, what colors do we see? I always like to go to the color wheel. What are we seeing there? Because the colors that we see colors that we use will help determine what we do here to indicate that. Well, you see the way that photo has printed out. That's what we'll go by. And if you're there on location in plein air, it's the best way to see what colors really are that you're seeing. But we're going to go by what the photo shows us. If you look real closely, you see blue-green, and you really can't tell what color these dark or these little clumps where obviously the grass is in little clumps there. You can't really tell what that color is, but we see it's dark. I'm assuming that it's in that green range. But what we see here is yellow-green. You see that? All these little light places are lighter, and they're varying degrees of lighter. They're not all the same degree of light, and that is because in areas where the foliage is thinner, more light's coming through. And that's what we want to show. So what I'll do here, I see the blue-green, and I see a little bit of that yellow-green. All right, so I'm going to start with the yellow-green for the color I'm going to put on the palette, because I need the ability for both yellow-green and blue-green. And I like the sap green. Daniel Smith sap green. It was been my favorite for years, but they don't make it anymore. But Rembrandt has a sap green. It's close, not quite as good as Daniel Smith, but it's close. And then rather than choose a blue-green, I'll just choose ultramarine blue to turn this and lean this more towards green by adding blue. You see right here on the color wheel shows us by adding blue to yellow-green, you get blue-green and green. So you add more blue plus yellow-green gives you blue-green, less of that blue plus yellow-green gives you just green. So if I use those two colors, I have the ability to do this full range of colors here. Now you might think I need yellow too, but I don't. And the reason I don't need yellow, because this is yellow-green right here, but it's a cool yellow-green. It's cooler than the yellow-green that we see here. You can compare those right here. Compare this with that. And what I know from experience is if I mix white into my sap green, it's going to give me a cooler version that feels more like yellow-green when surrounded by the blue-green. So that's how I figure the color out, and the rest is value, figuring the value out. All right, so because I am going to need some of that white, I'll just pull it down in the palette. Now, usually I'll set up a value line with the color, but I'll just cut through the chase here and just do this pretty direct. Now, first of all, let's get a paper towel here and wipe off my palette knife. First of all, I'm just going to scrub into the canvas. Now, what I'm doing is not scumble, but scrub. I found that's a really good way when you really don't see a lot of textures. A really good way to get the color on as the block in, and then you can put the textures on top of that. So if something that's massive like that, this is, I think, a relatively good method for doing it. So I'm going to pull out the yellow-green here and pull out the blue here. And I'll just mix it as I go and as I need it. Now we'll start out, let's start out and just begin to scrub some color and just in that value that we see there. So I'm going to pick up the yellow-green right here. And I'm picking it up not really thick, I'm just picking it up sort of flat on each side of the brush. This is a filbert. It's a bristle, filbert bristle, and I don't know what size it is. I think the size is all worn out. A 6, 9, 6. Anyway, you can see about a ½ inch. Good brush for good size brush for exercise like this. So I'm going to add just enough blue in that blue-green, and then I'm going to begin to scrub it in like this. Just scrub it in. And I need to add just a little bit more of that blue into it. And I'm going to probably need some of that, but I'm just going to use this first of all and show you how we can do that. So let's just go and begin to do that. And I'll just leave some of those spaces blank. Scrub it in there. There we go. There's the blue-green. I see it coming through. And just scrub it in and leave some spaces. Now, in some places, I'm going to scrub it a little harder than others, so that I can have it thinner there. And let's just get another load. And the reason I'm doing it this way is that I don't want it, I don't want it all the same blue-green. I want some of it leaning a little blue in some ways and leaning a little bit more yellow-green in other ways. And so So if you load the brush each time like this, rather than mix that up to begin with, you can get that. Now we get over here, and up here we see just tiny. I'm going to turn it like this for this. And I'm moving and using this back and forth stroke here because I see that as a back and forth movement. I usually will do that. Whatever movement I can detect here, I let that guide me as to how I move the brush. And so that's what I'm seeing happen there. And then do just a little bit like this, and this. And now what does it do? Okay, it's very scanty in the back there, where the tree, the bottom of the tree is reflecting. It's just very scanty. So I'm just going to put that very, very thin, and just keep coming down. I'm not going to try to do the whole thing. I don't want to take a lot of time just to show you a method here that for doing such a thing as a foliage, being a cast shadow foliage where you see the light coming through it. And I guess that is also air coming through it. So I'm still kind of debating about that. Anyway, so you see I'm not being real particular about how much green or how much blue. Just so this is a little bit more and this a little bit more, a little bit less. And I'm leaving some little white spots and so on and so on. Let's get that just a little bit more. We get a little bit more blue down here as we're coming down. That's probably enough of that. Let's get over here just a little bit and just scrub like that. Now, at this point, what I'm going to do, so I'm just using that horizontal motion. Same motion I use for doing water that's moving, surface of the not falling water, but water that we see moving in the distance. Variations on this sort of stroke is moving with, that's the way I see it moving, so that's the way my brush moves. And that's the way I gauge how the brush moves. All right, now let's put in the air holes or the light holes. So I'm going to go over into this white, and not much, just a little bit. And you see, I've got enough of that yellow green blue bean, whatever was left in the brush that it tints that white very gradually. Let's hold it up. You see what I mean there? All right, now, don't want much in the brush, don't need much in the brush. And so let's just try this. Let's just sort of, there we go, very light touch, and scrub that in. You see what we get there? We get that feeling of light coming through those shadows. You see it in here? And so there's not much light coming through back here. Those are just a little bit of variation in value. And I want to do these where we see just a little bit of that very blue-greenish light coming through first, and a bit here. Now, I'm going to rinse that. I'm going to rinse the brush now and go into the lighter light that we see. But here's what I'm going to do. And when you rinse the brush, always squeeze the very dickens out of it to get it just as dry as you can. You want to get all that solvent out. Go right up in here into the yellow-green, which is the sap green. I'm just going to mix some white into that. This doesn't have any of the blue in it. I'm going to mix some white into this. Maybe I'll carry it over here so I mix it easier. Right over here. Now, I need to get that the same value as I'm seeing these. So if I hold, no, it's not quite the same value yet. So I'll just reach over and get it a little bit lighter. Let's see. It's getting very close. Let's see. Am I going to need more yellow in that? Let's see. We'll find out. A little bit lighter. Okay, that's very, very close. So let's see if we can make it work with that. Now for that, I'm just going to stick with this brush. Here's what I'll do. Just load just the tip of that filbert. Just the tip, and not much. I've got it spread out here on the canvas, so then I can just tilt the brush and pull the brush into that, so I don't get very much on it at all. And let's just go up here and work it in. And then as we work it in, blend it. I'm going to work it in first. I'll just work it into those areas I see it in. And see, I see them back in here. See some back in here. See, I'm using that same motion, that same movement of the brush that I'm seeing there. And just see a little bit of that back down in here. And a little bit right in here. I'm not trying to do that exactly like I see it there. Just the pattern, the kind of pattern we see. We see a lot of that right back in here. You come in here like this, like this, like this, and perhaps here. I'm going to wipe the brush off now, and we need to blend. You see those edges that are blended, so I'll just go right back and barely holding the brush in my hand, and at almost a not quite a flat angle, but a pretty good angle. And I'm just going to barely touch. I'm just turning that brush a little bit sideways, and just in between the edges of the lighter value and the darker value. I'm just going to give that a very slight, just move back and forth using that same movement. You see it blend. You see it blend. I try not to touch that where it's the lightest because I want to keep that light. You just blend those edges, just like that. Just like that. Just blending those edges. Blending those edges here. Let's come back here and blend some edges. So very light touch. Now every now and then when you're blending wet paint on the canvas like that, it's a good idea just to pull the excess paint off the brush and just begin to blend again. You don't have to rinse a brush for this, for blending, especially if you're blending the same colors that you have on the brush. You don't have to rinse it. Just be sure that you give a very light touch. See, not much of that brush touching the canvas. You see right here. Not very much at all. And it doesn't take much, but just barely touch it in between those areas and move back and forth with it until you see it blend and get away from it. Don't overdo it or you blend the whole thing out and you won't be able to see anything. So that is my interpretation of what I think the person asked for, we'll call them sky holes, but perhaps shadows that have air in them. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.